We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Friday. We had a guest scheduled for today, but he didn't show up. This isn't somebody that's ever been on before. And I was kind of iffy about putting him on. He has a lot of experience in PR in Washington, D.C., and I thought that was interesting. But I think the reason he wanted to come on is because he wrote a book about um, raising his three sons, and that's fine. It was a good book. Little parts of it I read. It was a fine book. What I thought was interesting though is his experience in D.C. and he was basically talking about character, and I was curious as to why he thought we lack character in Washington D.C. now. That's certainly the case. Anyway, he didn't end up showing up, so that's fine. I'm here by myself. Done this before. I can do it a fucking again. We'll be fine. Anyway, we're ramping up to this election coming up on Tuesday. We're 4 days away. I'm ready for this to be fucking done. I am so tired of waiting and sitting on pins and needles. And when I say I'm sitting on pins and needles, it's not that I'm worried about what's going to happen Tuesday. I have no question in my mind Kamala Harris will win and probably win by a significant amount. When I say pins and needles, it's about waiting to see what kind of email, DM, or comment on my post I will get. Honest to God, I get this every day. And please understand, I'm not bitching. I understand why people are concerned. But every day somebody will come to me, a number of people will come to me and say, "Oh, this just happened. Have you changed your mind?" And I keep saying, "No, I haven't changed my mind. All of this stuff is little shit. At this stage of the game, nothing is really going to impact the election. It's too late. What's going to happen is going to happen." That's good news for Kamala as far as I'm concerned. Bad news for Donald Trump. Donald Trump keeps trying to pull himself out of the fire, but he just keeps stoking the fire. Whether it's talking about Haitians eating pets or Puerto Ricans and Puerto Rico being a garbage island in the ocean. Every time he talks, he does something stupid. Just yesterday, for example, he was talking about his issues with women in the campaign. Now, Donald Trump believes he's going to win. Fact is, the whole Trump campaign somehow has it in their head that they're going to win and they're going to win easily. I don't know how they get that. But that's good. That's good. I love seeing them lose, and I love seeing them losing, and then prior to that, getting blindsided. It's going to be a bad night for them. But Donald Trump knows that he's having problems with women. And why not? He's a misogynistic piece of shit. He overturned Roe v. Wade. He took constitutional rights away from women. He's been found liable for sexual assault / rape. He's got all kinds of people making all kinds of claim about sexual assault or harassment. Yeah, he's got problems with women. So he goes to his staff and he says, "Listen, got an idea. Only I can fix it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go out there and tell the ladies that I am going to be a protector of women. I am their protector." Now, his staff said, that's probably not a good idea. The ladies aren't going to like that, especially with all that's going on. So please don't say it. They won't like that. And of course, Donald Trump doesn't listen to shit. So he steps out there, tells the story about how his staff doesn't want him to say it, but fuck it, he's going to say it anyway. And how that his staff told him that women won't like this. And he said, being a tough guy, said, "I don't care if women like it. I am going to be a protector of women." Once again, he burned the fucking house down because he's basically telling women, "You don't know what's best for you. I do. And I'm going to do whatever I think should be done with you or for you, and you don't have any say in it." He's already having problems with women. This did not help. And he doesn't even realize that he fucked up. But I guarantee you, all the little people around him, they know he fucked up. Anyway, we'll talk more about this. We've got a number of emails to get to on this show. Thankfully, because the guest didn't show up, that's fine. We've got emails we can discuss and other stories to talk about. We're ramping up to this election, so it's going to get hot and heavy. All right. The first one says, "Good morning, Boomer. I'm listening to your podcast with Will after the debacle at MSG, Madison Square Garden. I'm a Puerto Rican born and raised in New York. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. Several of my cousins are veterans. My dad and several of my uncles are veterans. My grandfather served in World War II in Korea, and my great grandfathers served in World War I. Thank you all for your service. My family, over the last 100+ years, has over 50 veterans of the U.S. Armed Forces. We're all proud Puerto Ricans. To watch the BS being pushed by the Trump camp is absolutely disgusting and truly un-American. I feel Will's pain, and trust me, I've been X-rated the last few days, as I'm sure he has been." When he says X-rated, we're not talking sexually explicit. We're talking about swearing. The fact that there are still Puerto Rican and Latinos still supporting and voting Trump is disappointing. I'm beyond angry, as you could imagine. I read a post yesterday from a son of one of my friends. He posted, "Kamala doesn't care about Puerto Ricans." I was taken aback and then was like, "Hey, asshole, Trump withheld aid to Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria hit. We know what he thinks about Puerto Ricans, you fucking moron." Worst part, he's also NYPD, a police officer. Not surprising. It's disgusting and disrespectful to every Puerto Rican and Latino to make a statement like that, to be oblivious to what Trump has done in the past. I truly appreciate your podcast, all your guests, and I'm glad you had Will on today. I really wanted to know how he would react, and it was exactly as I expected. We're both Puerto Rican, and I knew his reaction would be similar to mine. Thank you very much for letting me vent in this email. One question that bugs the ever-living shit out of me: how the fuck do union members still support this orange shit stain when everyone knows he's 100% against unions? It boggles the fuck out of me. Here's to hope in a week from now we get to celebrate, because his nightmare needs to fucking end. Artie from Long Island. That's a good question. Why do some of the unions, not all the unions, some of the unions still support Donald Trump? Why do some Puerto Ricans and Latinos and people of color in general support him? I don't know exactly. They maybe have been indoctrinated into this cult and they will believe anything that he says. Or there's the other part. The thing that I found most disconcerting since Donald Trump has become president, the realization that I came up with when Donald Trump was president, and people continued to follow him after he fucked up after fuck up after fuck up. We have to resolve ourselves to the fact that there's a fairly large faction of people out here that are just fucking stupid. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. That's the nicest way I can explain it. The other option would be they're evil motherfuckers too. But I think it's more likely that they're stupid, gullible, and they get sucked into the cult. Thank you very much, Artie. I can understand your irritation as well. Next one says, Michael Cohen, in his podcast following the Madison Square Garden MAGA rally, points out that Elon Musk drew more applause than Trump at the Madison Square Garden Festival of Prejudice. Like an elephant, Trump never forgets anyone who publicly upstaged him and will ruthlessly deliver his revenge on Musk in due course. Cohen also astutely observed the three of Trump's anti-democratic apostles share a national heritage with the apartheid racist South African pre-Mandela government. These are Peter Thiel, backer of J.D. Vance and financier of Vance's Senate win, Elon Musk, and the owner of the LA Times. The observation is astute and explains a lot of what is one of the major reasons why we should reject the reconstructed Republican Party in its entirety. Keep us sane and ever more committed to securing the implosion of current republicanism. Chris from London. Well, thank you very much, Chris. It's pretty clear that racism is at the heart of the Republican Party. Now, some of these people will say, well, I'm not as bad as Donald Trump, but you support Trump. So you're culpable. You're at the very least an accessory after the fact. If you helped a criminal, you can get arrested for that too. And I'm not talking specifically, I'm just talking about guilt. The entire Republican Party is guilty at this point because they've let Donald Trump run roughshod, let MAGA do whatever the fuck they want, even though they don't really have a majority in the Republican Party. These people were cowards. They allowed them to do whatever they wanted, and they've made a mess of this country and our Congress over the last 9 years. I don't know how to explain it. I have said this, though. You know, when I was born in the 60s, racism was kind of an accepted thing. Yeah, people are racist. Yeah, people say the N word. It wasn't as big a deal as it later became as we became more evolved. That said, I don't think racism has ever gotten better since the early days. I think the problem is when society changed and weren't accepting of racism anymore, these people continued to be racist, but they slid under their rocks. They hid out because they knew they'd get some heat if they spoke out like they'd had up to that point. The perception of white people is, oh, racism has gotten better. But if you're a person of color, you know it never got better. It was just hid under the cover of darkness, or as somebody squeaks out from the rocks. The change came when Donald Trump became president, started spewing the shit that he's spewing, and made it okay for these people to slither back out from under the rocks and say whatever the fuck they want. It was cool to be racist again. That you can blame on Donald Trump. That you can blame on MAGA. And once they started doing that, you found all the racists racing to Donald Trump, supporting him because he's the one person that supports the sickness, the vile bullshit that they believe. I don't know that we can fix racism with a lot of these people. The only thing we can hope for, and I believe it's coming once Kamala is elected president and MAGA is put in its place, is to get them stuffed back under those rocks so we don't have to listen to their bullshit anymore. That's the first step. The only way we can fix racism is to better educate our young people. I mean, many young people are far less racist than their parents were, but their parents are still around and they're still racist. So it has to be education. And that might explain why Republicans want to do away with public education, want to change history, make it illegal to tell the truth about what happened in America. They don't want to have to face up with the criminality, the corruption, and the racism that has gone on in this country for so long. Well, that's about to change because MAGA is going to take a serious hit on November 5th. Donald Trump will be done as a candidate. Donald Trump will be in his most vulnerable spot. He'll have no protection. There are 3 trials coming up, a sentencing coming up, all kinds of lawsuits. They're going to come for his money. And Donald Trump is going to be in dire straits even before he gets sent to jail. And I think ultimately, when he gets through his 3 trials, many of his convictions will require jail time. Now it's all of a matter of if he survives that long. And frankly, he doesn't look to be in that great a shape. Cognitively, obviously, he's bouncing all over the place. He can't keep a sentence straight. He can't stay on topic. We don't know what he's saying half the time. There was something that happened yesterday, and it's a little sad, but I had to laugh at it because I'm a sick fuck like that. But you remember there was the story that Joe Biden came out and said that the only garbage he sees are the followers of Donald Trump. Now, there was some pushback and some blowback on that. But the bottom line is what Joe said is true. The people that follow Donald Trump are, in fact, garbage. Donald Trump wants to act like he's being attacked, that he's being bullied, and so do the Trumplafucks. But here's the deal. They've been attacking and calling names and bullying for 9 fucking years. And it's so often the case when we're talking about bullies, the moment you push back, they curl up on the ground and cry like little bitches and claim that you're violent and crazy. Now, the Democrats have tried to walk this back a little bit, and that frustrates me because there's nothing inaccurate about what Joe Biden said. It might have meant something different or whatever, but who cares? 9 years we've dealt with this bullshit. Joe says one thing and everybody's upset and crying. And then the Democrats, being pussy ass bitches, they want to pull back and say, well, that's not what he meant. Fuck that. That's exactly what he meant. And he was right. I mean, let's look at the facts. Donald Trump made all kinds of claims about all kinds of people. He said Mexicans were coming across the border and they were drug dealers, sex traffickers, murderers, and burglars and robbers. That wasn't true. He said that Haitians were eating pets. That wasn't true. He said Puerto Rico was a garbage island in the middle of the ocean. That wasn't true. Joe Biden says that Trump-la-fucks are garbage, and that is true. Time to toughen up, Snowflake, you fucking little buttercup. Times have changed. Democrats aren't going to take shit from you anymore. They aren't going to listen to your shit. And when it does come, you're going to get slapped in the mouth, get the taste slapped out of your mouth. They don't like this. They're going to cry and whine about it, but they're not going to cry and whine about the garbage statement for very long because they're going to get completely fucked up on November 5th. Like I said before, it's amazing to me, and I don't know if they're doing it to themselves on purpose or they really believe it. They believe that they're going to win this election. Donald Trump is going to win this election, and many people think he's going to win in a landslide. Now, some Democrats will hear that and go, oh my God, now I'm scared. Don't listen to the bullshit. I've told you this 100 times. Do not listen to what they say. They're pathological liars. They do nothing but lie, and they always lose. So fuck what they say. Let them believe that. Let them get blindsided on November 5th. One of the main reasons they're probably trying to get their base to believe this is it'll make it easier to make the argument that the election was rigged. I think in realistic terms, the Republicans, the reasonably minded, I won't say reasonably minded, reasonably intelligent, aware of what's going on, they know they're going to lose. And they're going to need an argument to suggest that the election was rigged. And in that argument, they're going to need to whip up the bases, what exactly they're doing. Now, I know a lot of people are worried about the prospect of Donald Trump getting his ass kicked and them screaming, oh my God, it was rigged. Let's go to court. And they're going to do all that stuff no matter what. Keep in mind that Kamala Harris has a stable of top lawyers already working on these things. None of this will work. I mean, shit, it didn't work in 2020 when Donald Trump was in power. How do you think it's going to work with Joe Biden in power and ready? We're all ready for this shit. It's not going to happen. But he's got to make his followers believe that it's true. And since we've already established that they're dumb motherfuckers, it wasn't hard. It wasn't difficult at all. All right. Thank you, Chris from London. Next one says, hey, Boomer, love your show. Keep up the good work. I came across this podcast as I was listening to Tim Miller on the Bulwark broadcast, and he mentioned a podcast by Ezra Klein. I highly recommend it. And then he sent me a link. It's out on Spotify. Look for Ezra Klein on Spotify. Have a great one, Tim, in PTC, Georgia. All right, the next one says, hey, Boomer, Gordy from Utah here. Just wanted you to know that after hearing you on your podcast with Will, I took your advice and I'm not buying shit on Amazon for a week. I'm so pissed about these silly fucks like Bezos and dipshit Elon Commie Musk. I canceled my Prime. I'm adjusting to ordering my needs elsewhere. I know I'm just one guy in Utah, but I'm taking a stand. I'm not giving him any more of my money. Thanks, Boomer, for your help and support on this circus called the election and the Trump-la-fucks. Gordy. Yeah, what he's talking about is this whole thing with the Washington Post. The Washington Post, as you know, for the first time ever, I believe, they decided not to endorse anybody, not Kamala Harris and not Donald Trump. But make no mistake, by them not endorsing Kamala Harris, that was essentially an endorsement of Donald Trump. At least a certain amount of cowardice, afraid of what Donald Trump might do. So instead of making a stand and making a decision like a grown up man, they decided not to endorse anybody. Now we could blame the editorial staff on the Washington Post, but it wasn't them. We found out that in fact they were going to endorse Kamala Harris, and then Jeff Bezos nixed it, which is interesting. Why is Jeff Bezos set on doing whatever he can to harm this country, a country where he's made billions of dollars? But apparently his loyalty to Donald Trump is far more important than his customers and his employees. And I'd heard a story. I haven't heard much about it lately, so I don't know it's absolutely sure. But the story was this, that like Elon Musk, Bezos has a space department called Blue Horizon. And apparently there were some reports that Jeff Bezos, on behalf of Blue Horizon, was in some talks with the Trump campaign. We don't know what they talked about, but it sure sounds fishy, doesn't it? And I suggested, this motherfucker's make a lot of money off of all of us. And I can't tell people just to not buy on Amazon anymore, because a lot of people depend on it. But I thought it might be an interesting statement if everybody just didn't buy anything for 1 week. Maybe that would send a message. I'm not buying anything on there, and I'm not telling you you have to. But some message has to be sent to Jeff Bezos, because he's an asshole and he's contrary to the future of this country and the people in it, which is surprising given the fact that he's making a lot of money from all of us. Thank you, Gordy. I appreciate it. All right, the next one says, "Hey, Mike, like you, I have absolutely no doubt that Harris will win the popular vote. I have no doubt she'll win enough electoral votes either. But one thing is concerning. North Carolina is actively trying to say they can't get an accurate vote due to the effects of the hurricane. The right-wing government there is saying they're just going to give their votes to Trump. My question and concern is this: what if all right-wing state governments decide to do the same thing? Just give the electorals to the diapered one, regardless of the voting results. Let's face it, if this strategy gets appealed, it's probably going to end up being decided by the incredibly corrupt SCOTUS. What happens then? Does Biden have the immunity to overturn them, or are we subject to the whims of such outstanding citizens like Thomas Alito and Roberts? This is really a concern for me. Please explain to me how this can be avoided. Thanks in advance for helping to keep me sane, Billy Paul." Well, Paul, I'm going to tell you this. I'm getting hit with this all day, every day. People get up in the morning. Things might look good in the campaign. They do look good, frankly. All arrows point to Kamala winning. But some people get up every day and they're looking for something to worry about. They're waiting for the rug to be pulled out from under them. And you need to stop doing that. What they're suggesting is not even legal. Not even the Supreme Court could go along with that. There are very strict rules from the Constitution that talks about the certification and the counting of the votes. To pull something like that off is virtually impossible. That's not going to work. And it won't happen. I'll give you an example. We heard all the stories about Georgia. They're going to do a hand count. They're going to delay the certification. And guess what? Every one of those things have been challenged by Kamala Harris's legal team, and every one of them has been denied in courts. Just because somebody says, "I'm going to do this," doesn't mean you get scared. You try to figure out if it's true, if it's real. See, they want to tell this story to the dumb motherfuckers that will believe it. And I'm not saying you're dumb, Philly Paul. But the dumb motherfuckers that support Donald Trump, they need to tell them a story. And then they get all worked up and they're thinking as long as they can control the narrative, maybe they'll be able to muscle their way through on some things. but it's not going to work. Kamala Harris has a huge stable of lawyers. They're working on everything and anything that comes up. They're going to be working overtime after the election. All the things they say they're going to do are just bullshit. Everything they said they were going to do in Georgia wasn't legal. Just because they said it doesn't mean it's going to happen. Take it through the process, take it to court, and the shit doesn't happen. Don't worry about that shit. Here's the thing. If North Carolina said we can't do it because of the hurricane, how's Pennsylvania going to do that? They didn't have a hurricane. It's you're worrying about stuff that you don't need to worry about. You're putting yourself through hell, and it's not fucking necessary. Just settle down, Philly Paul. Next one comes from another Paul. Talk about coming full circle. Trump has been complaining about the USA being a garbage can. Now would be the time for some clever reporter to reference the Sesame Street character Donald Grump. Check it out. Even back in the day, that Donald already had a rep as being an a-hole. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, after that statement from Joe Biden, Donald Trump thought he'd try to own a libtard. So he set up a photo op with him and a garbage truck. This didn't help him at all. This hurt him. So he put this big garbage truck in front of him. He put on an orange vest. On the garbage truck, ironically or appropriately, there was a big Trump Vance 2024 sign on the side. So Donald Trump was going to try to be like one of the regular guys, and he went over to the truck and was going to get in and sit in the cab. Trouble is, he missed the doorknob twice, and then he stumbled backwards and did some fucking polka two-step because he couldn't hold his balance. Eventually, he dragged himself up into the cab and made some stupid statements about garbage and Joe Biden. He thought he did something there, but he did fucking absolutely nothing, to be perfectly honest. He didn't do anything. Donald is trying all these things and none of them are working. In fact, most of them end up hurting him. You know, the telling us that he doesn't care if women want it or not. Haitians are eating pets. Puerto Rico is a garbage island in the middle of the ocean. Every time he opens his mouth, he makes it worse for himself. And all these are sticking now as we're close to the election. I've told you this a number of times. Don't worry about what Donald Trump says. Just let him keep talking, because every time he talks, he fucks himself up more. He does more damage to his situation himself than Kamala Harris and the Harris team could possibly do. All right, next one comes from Fred. He says, "Hey, Mike, it was a great show with you and Tony. Always good to hear his insight, and you guys play well off of each other. We're getting down to the wire, and I'm more confident than ever that Kamala will be our next president. Keep doing what you're doing, Fred." Well, thank you, Fred. Fred's been on the show. It's been a while, Fred. Been a long while since Fred's been on the show, so send me an email. Very sharp guy out of the Chicago area. Always good to hear from him, but we don't hear from you enough. So, Fred, reach out and come on the show. I think I think we can have some fun together. All right. The next one says, "Hi, Mike. Loved your show today with Tony and wanted to pass this information along regarding your Medicare questions. I work with seniors for 15 years and every year would facilitate to have a local health insurance consultant come to help my seniors with their Medicare questions. I have a really knowledgeable contact here in Buffalo, New York, and actually set up a meeting for my father with her to go over his health insurance and Medicare questions. She ended up helping him tremendously. I know she probably wouldn't be able to help you in Minnesota, but you could check with your local social center or senior center to see if they have reputable benefits company or companies who can consult with you. There are a lot of scammers out there, so it's good to find someone who is trustworthy. Thanks for everything and have a great night, Gabrielle." Well, Gabrielle, I appreciate that. I'm going to need some help here. Going to be 65 in April. And when I hit 65, I got to go with the Medicare. So I will check with the senior center. I picture people playing shuffleboard and dancing. The reason I say the dancing is when I was a young kid, I used to hang around this park in South Minneapolis, Longfellow Park. I played football, baseball, wrestling, and all that stuff there. And it was the main hangout to go where kids went during the day in the summer and after school during the year. We would go hang out at the park. I made a lot of friends at the parks, people I still know. I was kind of a little timid kid at first. Then I started playing sports, got a little confidence, met some people, grew up a little bit, became a little self-aware. And I will tell you this, I rose to the highest level in that Longfellow Park. Every year they would have a winter dance at the park. And it got a little crazy. I'm going to tell you, junior high school, we would have occasion to drink some cheap beer or cheap wine and then go to the dance a little inebriated. And it could be kind of a Donnybrook of sorts at times. But in my ninth grade year, when I was getting ready to no longer hang out there anymore because I was going to go to high school and then we go off and do different things. But I was voted king of the park, and a young lady that I knew was queen of the park. Now, at the time, I thought that was the coolest thing, but I look back at those pictures now. I go, what a doofus this motherfucker was. I'm talking about me. But it was a great time. And it was great fun. And now, for the life of me, I can't even understand. I don't even know why I brought that up. Anyway, Gabrielle, I appreciate your suggestions with the Social Security, and I will certainly check into it. I feel like Donald Trump here, going off on tangents and not realizing where I'm fucking heading. And then when I get there, I don't know why I'm there. Senior moments to be sure. But I tell you this, I could get up in a garbage truck. It might take me a little work because I got short legs, but I would get up in that motherfucker and I wouldn't trip in the process. All right. We are going to take a quick break and we will be right back. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. We've got a couple of other emails, then we'll talk about some of the news that happened yesterday. Next one is, hi, Boomer. I always enjoy when you have Tony as a guest, as you did yesterday. I wanted to chime in about the Republican Party rebuilding itself after they lose miserably next week. For their sake, I hope and pray that the think tank Tony spoke of includes the likes of Rick Wilson, George Conway, and other members of the Lincoln Project. These were true Republicans who abandoned the party when Trump and his stench rolled in. I've never been a Republican, but I can remember when the party had some integrity, and I hope for our country's sake they can come back with those who stood against Trump in charge. Well, there weren't too many of them. It's going to be a small party. He goes on to say, on another note, I have to disagree with you and Tony on one thing. Gen Xer here, just wanting to point out that my generation, nicknamed the Invisible Generation, should not be underestimated. Kamala Harris is a cusper, but I think she's more Gen X than Boomer. My generation has had little opportunity to make a mark because we have been under the massive Boomer shadow forever. Give us a moment to prove ourselves here. And remember, that we're kind of badass. As most of us raised ourselves, we're also nicknamed the feral generation. After all, we are the ones who have raised millennials and Gen Zs who are also pretty badass. Thanks for everything, Boomer, and I cannot wait to hear your I told you so's next week. Bring on election day. Gabrielle from New York, Buffalo, New York. Yeah, I know what you're saying about the Gen Xers, and I have no ill feelings toward Gen Xers. I mean, I was born in 1960, so I'm close to being a Gen Xer. I'm a very, very young boomer, and I too raised millennials. So I'm not that far off of where you are. And Kamala Harris was born in 64, which is the absolute dead end of the boomer generation. So she's probably just as much Gen X. And I think I have a little Gen X in me too. I was raised kind of similarly to some Gen Xers. I like to be accurate, though. I've always looked at what they describe boomers to be. People born between 1946 and 1964. I'm born in 1960. I'm a boomer. And some other people come in and say, "What about Jen Jones?" I don't know shit about Jen Jones. I heard about that a year ago. I don't even know if that's a real thing. And in the end, it doesn't really fucking matter. I use the term rational boomer because I couldn't come up with anything else at the time. It could have been anything else. Um, but I get what you're saying. And we're not underestimating the Gen Xers. I'm underestimating the people, whether they be boomers or Gen Xers, who are Donald Trump supporters. I know there's a bunch of Gen Xers out there that believe as we do. So don't think we're underestimating them. We aren't. They are a sizable crowd and we need their help, and they are a valuable part of this country. All right, the last email. Morning, Boomer. Just saw your podcast on YouTube and wanted to say your guest, Cress from Illinois, was a great interview and talk, and he's funny. He is definitely welcome here with the rest of the Boomer Brigade. Go Kamala. Gordy. Thank you, Gordy. Yeah, Cress was on for the first time yesterday. Cress was coming to us from Central Illinois, spent some time living in Florida, a couple of years younger than I. He's a farmer by trade, and as well as other things too. And it was fun to talk to him. It's always, I never get worried about it. I believe I can talk to pretty much anybody. But when somebody comes on for the first time, you really don't know what to expect. And there is no preparation. I just say, this is a conversation, follow my lead. And then when you want to jump in on your own, feel free to do it. And fortunately, it always seems to turn out. And Cress did a great job. So I'm looking forward to the time when he will come back. But we have a lot of good luck with a lot of guests, and we've got more guests coming up in the future. So hang with us. And if you're one of those folks that want to be a guest on the program, it's very simple to do. All you do is email me, tell me you want to be on. We kind of work out when we can get the time set up between both of us. And then when that time comes, I send you a Zoom link. You click the link, you step in, and we just start to talk. Not a big deal. It's not hard. And it ends up being pretty easy because I'm a fucking genius. No, I'm kidding. I do, in my life in radio, I've learned to do interviews. And the whole point of an interview is try to get people to engage with you and answer questions or ask questions and feel comfortable. And I think I've been pretty successful at that to this point. And I'm going to keep doing that because here's the thing. My goal on this podcast was never for me to come here and pontificate every day as if I'm the one that knows, the only one that knows, and I'm the smartest one in the room. I'm not delusional at all, and I know that's not true. And I think what's more important than one guy pontificating is to hopefully inspire some thought and some engagement. And that's what we try to do with the podcast, whether it be in the emails or whether it be in the guests. I can't do anything on my own. The only thing I can do is give out information, talk to other people, give out their information, and then those listening spread it to other folks. And they spread it to other folks. And we pull together a pretty good crowd of people. Then all of a sudden, we've got a powerful voice. That was always my intent. I've never been the one to suggest that I know everything. I know a fuck of a lot. No, it's not even that I know a lot. It's that I've trained myself to look at things differently than most people. I don't get emotional about it. You ever heard how some pro athletes, somehow in their minds when they're playing, the reason they're so successful is they slow in their heads, in their minds, everything slows down around them so they have time to react to it. Well, I don't have that gift, but I purposefully slow things down. At a moment in time when everybody wants to ramp things up and get scared and react and get emotional, I purposely pull back and slow things down. That gives me a chance to look at things and then really kind of analyze what's going on. Then I look at all the different angles and I decide what's the best and what it really means. That doesn't mean I'm always right, but I'm right more often than I'm wrong because I didn't react. I didn't get emotional. I looked objectively at the problem, looked at the options, and then picked out the best option. If you can do that, if you can slow things down and not react, anybody can do that. but it's training yourself to not get upset, not get scared, not act emotionally. All right. Well, Donnie's at it again. Apparently, he doesn't have enough litigious shit going on with him. Donald Trump filed a lawsuit in Texas on Thursday. Trump is demanding $10 billion in damages from CBS, alleging that deceptive doctoring of the network's 60 Minutes interview with the 2024 election opponent, Vice President Kamala Harris, confused and misled voters in Texas. Just in Texas? Isn't 60 Minutes on in every fucking state in the country? Apparently, he's got uh, what's the word I'm looking for? A sympathetic right wing judge in Texas that he thinks he can get some traction on. So he's going to sue 60 Minutes, CBS. Good luck with that, Donnie. I bet you end up dropping the fucking thing. You put that out there in a way to try to discredit Kamala Harris in 60 Minutes. It's just noise for you. It's just talk. You're not going to follow through with that lawsuit because you don't have the money to do it. Because if you sue CBS and 60 Minutes and you lose, guess what? You have to pay all their legal fees. And I got a feeling that's going to be fucking expensive. Now, Donald Trump is certainly capable of fucking himself over, so he could follow through with that. But how many lawsuits have we heard that Donald Trump has filed and he ends up dropping because somebody finally tells him, that's fucking dumb, Donnie? Trump called for an investigation into the network earlier this month, claiming that Harris was made to look more presidential. More presidential than what? You, Donnie? I look more presidential than you dumb motherfucker. Trump's lawyers say the interview amounted to malicious election interference and substantial news distortion. News distortion? Seems to me there's another network that engages in a lot of news distortion. Oh, that would be Fox News. They go to the point where they lie and get sued and pay out $800 million because they're liars. But you want to call out CBS? Good luck with that, motherfucker. The interview at issue is the one that appeared in 2 video clips posting online by CBS. Harris was answering questions about whether the U.S. has sway over Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In one version of the interview, shared online by CBS, she replied at length. In other footage from CBS, she answered the same question but more succinctly. Compare the transcripts. That's just editing by the fucking media outlet. In addition to $10 billion, Trump has also asked for a jury trial. Oh, yeah, let's get a jury trial. The former president had an opportunity, of course, to appear on 60 Minutes and to combat what Kamala said, but he pussed out. He said, I'm not going. He didn't have the courage. And you know why? Because they were going to fact check him. So Donald Trump didn't go on because he couldn't lie. And now they're suing CBS because he thinks they doctored something with Kamala's appearance. But now he's going to have to fucking prove that. And here's the thing with Donald Trump. He rarely has fucking evidence on anything he claims. As I say, this is just fucking noise. This is to make it look to the base that, yeah, that 60 Minutes thing was bullshit. He obviously believes that was very damaging to him. But I'll be honest with you, the things he said as of late, far more damaging than whatever happened with Kamala Harris on 60 Minutes. All you have to do is watch any campaign rally. Take the campaign rally at the Ellipse in Washington, D.C. Nobody ever looked more presidential than Kamala Harris there. Was that edited? No, that was motherfucking live. Donnie, you try so hard and you continue to fail. All right. Now, there was the situation I talked about where Joe Biden said, and I don't know if he really said it this way, the clip I have suggests he did, that Trump followers were garbage. And I said, I don't have a problem with that because Joe doesn't have anything to lose at this point. And the statement was true. They are fucking garbage. White House press officials altered the official transcript of a call in which President Joe Biden appeared to take a swipe at supporters of Donald Trump, drawing objections from the federal workers who document such remarks for posterity, according to the two U.S. government officials and an internal email obtained Thursday by the Associated Press. Biden created an uproar earlier this week with his remarks to Latino activists responding to racist comments at a Trump rally made by the comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, who referred to the U.S. island territory of Puerto Rico as a floating island of garbage. They aren't bitching about that. What they are bitching about is Biden, according to a transcript prepared by the official White House stenographers, told the Latino group on Tuesday evening's video call, "The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable and it's un-American." Now compare that to any number of things, hundreds of things that Donald Trump has said since 2015. See, this is the problem. The media will jump all over Joe Biden for the tiniest thing and just let Donald Trump run roughshod with anything he wants to do. That's a problem that's going to be rectified on November 5th. Donald Trump will become the joke of this country. The transcript released by the White House press office, however, rendered the quote with an apostrophe reading supporters rather than supporters, which aides said pointed to Biden's criticizing Hinchcliffe, not the millions of Americans who are supporting Trump for president. Okay, so they're backing off it a little bit, and I don't think you fucking need to. After all the things that Donald Trump has said and done, you're going to back off from this and say, oops, I made a mistake. The change was made after the press office conferred with the president. According to an internal email from the head of the stenographer's office that was obtained by the AP, the authenticity of the email was confirmed by two government officials who spoke on conditions of anonymity to discuss internal matters. How come stuff like this was never brought up when Donald Trump defamed E. Jean Carroll the second time and the third time? Nobody said anything about that except E. Jean Carroll's lawyer, who sued the motherfucker again. The supervisor in the email called the press office handling of the matter a breach of protocol and spoliation of a transcript integrity between the stenographer and press office. You would have never gotten this transcript from Donald Trump. If there is a difference in interpretation, the press office may choose to withhold the transcript, but cannot edit it independently. The supervisor wrote, adding, "Our stenography office transcript released to our distro, which includes the National Archives, is now different than the version edited and released to the public by the press office staff." And what's the difference? An apostrophe. Does that really make that much difference? I understand what they're trying to do here, but fuck it. Joe, they are garbage. You were right. Stand behind it and tell them they're fucking garbage again. The edit of the transcript came as the White House scrambled to respond to a wave of queries from reporters about Biden's comments. The president's remarks clashed with Vice President Kamala Harris' near simultaneous speech outside the White House, in which she called for treating Americans of different ideologies with respect. And she was asked, "Do you agree with what Joe Biden said?" And she said no. She said no. Of course she said no. And I'm glad she's able to do that now. She's in a tough situation because she really can't contradict the president. I mean, she's still the vice president and she can't contradict him, but she's still got to be her own person. And at that point, she said, no, I don't agree with that, which is what she should have said. I mean, the important thing is, regardless of what Joe Biden said, he's not running for president. I got to tell you, after the election, you're going to hear a lot of shit coming out of Joe's mouth that would not have come out before the election. And I'm here for it. I'm looking forward to it. It's about time somebody in power said some shit. Now, we keep hearing about the polls, and I keep telling you, don't worry about the polls. The polls are absolute bullshit. They've never been right. And it's all a game the media plays in order to hype up and gin up this this contest so that everybody's excited and everybody watches. But Democrats have a reason to be optimistic about Tuesday's presidential election after the release of a new Gallup poll. I put a little more weight in the Gallup poll. I don't know enough about it to know if it was sold, but back in the days when I was young, Gallup poll was pretty much the only poll you heard, mostly. So it's got a long history, and I would presume it's accurate, but I can't say for sure. Gallup, which is considered one of the more reputable polling organizations operating today, doesn't do election horse race polls of candidates. However, it does measure public opinion in other important ways that could predict how an election may turn out. On Thursday, Gallup released a series of polls exploring voter enthusiasm among supporters of both major parties and compared it to voter enthusiasm in past election cycles. The organization also gauged at how effective each campaign was at voter outreach. Now, in the most important or most recent survey, Gallup asked voters, compared to previous elections, are you more enthusiastic than usual about voting or less enthusiastic? The share of Democrat voters who said they were more enthusiastic was 77%, whereas the share of Republicans who answered the same way was just 67%. Whether that makes a difference, it does figure. I mean, all I have to do is look at the campaigns. There's a lot of enthusiasm behind Kamala Harris, and the Trump-lefucks are enthused behind Donald Trump, but they're a much smaller group. Now, when comparing the 2024 results to past elections, Democrats in particular are even more motivated to vote in 2024 than they were in 2008, where 76% of Democratic respondents said they were more enthusiastic. Republicans are also registering more enthusiasm in 2024 than in 2008. Though that margin is smaller, in 2008, 61% of the Republican voters were more excited to vote, whereas their share climbs a little to 67%. An additional notable metric from Gallup's survey found that while Republicans' voter enthusiasm was roughly at the same level this year as it was in 2020, 66% 4 years ago compared to 67% today, Harris is seeing a higher share of enthusiasm from her base than President Joe Biden had, as Biden registered 75% compared to her 77%. So that's all good news, but so what? What does it all really mean? People just trying to dissect this and try to figure out something they don't know. And the fact of the matter is, we don't really know what's going to happen on election day. I have a pretty good idea. I think without question, Kamala Harris wins. I think she wins in a big way. And I'm just basing it on the data and the facts I have, not the bullshit I hear from the media or the Republicans spewing. I don't listen to that shit because they're always wrong and they're playing a fucking manipulative game with us. So they're not a good source to consider. As I've said before, if you've got a period of time in fundraising where Kamala Harris gets $1 billion, Donald Trump gets about 300 million, Kamala Harris is all small donors, and Donald Trump is mostly large donors, that should tell you something. Who has more support? Well, clearly, Kamala Harris has more support, and in a big way. That tells me more than what's going on with the polls. So, a senior advisor to Donald Trump's presidential campaign lashed out at a reporter whom he called a famed gossip columnist over her reporting that the campaign pumped the brakes on its early celebration when it and has instead fallen into sweat mode. Tara Palmieri, senior political correspondent at Puck, reported Thursday that the Trump campaign felt undeniably palpable sense of euphoria washing over early voting numbers in Nevada, Georgia, and North Carolina. The campaign struck a decidedly different tone this week. As the early results from Pennsylvania reveal an influx of first-time female voters who will likely break for Harris, a newfound anxiety is taking hold, according to the report. And we know Pennsylvania may be the most important state in the entire election. And when you think of what he did with Puerto Ricans and women, and it's not surprising that women will come out en masse and vote against Donald Trump. I think we're going to see that all throughout the country. And Donald Trump and the Republicans and MAGA, they are at war with women. And if you've ever been married or a significant other that happens to be a woman, that's not a good move. That's just not a good move. The best move is to agree, try to smooth things over, try to keep your mouth shut, but that's just not Donald Trump. And even as Trump declares a massive early lead, some in the Mar-a-Lago sphere are starting to believe that his surge last week was 2 weeks premature. Palmieri reporter caught the attention and ire of Chris LaCivita, who shared Palmieri's social media post and article on X and slammed them. Of course he did. Actually, this bullshit tweet is a result of the fact that famed gossip columnist Tara Palmieri was denied credentials to Mar-a-Lago to cover election night due to her proclivity to write bullshit. Well, he said. You think that really happened? I think Donald Trump wants as much publicity as he can fucking possibly get a hold of. Palmieri fired back at LaCivita on X and tried to correct the record. I reported on your concerns about Pennsylvania on my podcast before you denied my credentials. Why are you so afraid of me covering your victory party? The social media spat comes amid a report that a separate red flag may have arisen for the Trump campaign with a silver surge in Pennsylvania, where Trump trails Kamala Harris in early voters among seniors. Well, why not? Republicans, we know, are trying to take away Social Security and Medicare and all the entitlements, as they call them. Donald Trump has alienated just about every faction of people in this country: women, people of color, senior citizens. How does he expect to fucking win? I don't get it. I know he's not going to win. Now, as we're getting ready to wrap up this Rational Boomer podcast, I have a story, and it's a little goofy. It's about a guy who's a little goofy, and it's hard to say that given his history in this country. At one point, he was thought as a hero. Now he seems like a fucking crank. And it's not just because of this situation. I'll explain more. Buzz Aldrin, the second man ever to walk on the moon, endorsed former President Trump's reelection bid on Wednesday. Buzz Aldrin, at one time a hero in this country for walking on the moon, the second man to do so. But in the time since that, Buzz has gotten a few problems. He got into a fisticuffs fight, hit a reporter one time because he asked the wrong question. He's made some claims about some weird claims about UFOs and the legitimacy of the moon landing. The fucking guy is 150 years old and he's goofy. So his endorsement isn't worth much, but it's ironic that he would stand up and say this. Maybe he thinks he doesn't have much time and isn't going to have to pay the price. Aldrin said in his official endorsement that the U.S. is facing difficult realities domestically and globally, and the country needs a proven, serious, tested leader for president. The Apollo 11 astronaut praised the former president for helping create the U.S. Space Force and his support for advances made in the private space sector. Other than creating the Space Force, which I think he stole from TV, what did he do? He didn't do anything. And Buzz Aldrin, who gives a fuck? People stopped listening to Buzz Aldrin years ago. He went on to say, over the years, I've seen our government's approach to space wax and wane and fluctuating dynamic that has disappointed me from time to time, Aldrin said in a statement released Wednesday. But under the first Trump administration, I was impressed to see how human space exploration was elevated, made a policy of high importance again. How did he do that? He gave a fucking military group a name. He said the U.S. had revitalized interest in space during Trump's time in the Oval Office. I have the same question. We went to the moon when I was a little kid. The computers were essentially as powerful as a common day calculator that we have now. It's a good question. Why haven't we gone back to the moon or other places? We've had the shuttles and we've had some other things, and now we're sending unmanned spaceships to the moon and that sort of thing. But why did it get shut down? That's a good question. Was it because of the presidents we've had, Congress, money? I don't know what it is, but Trump's not the fucking answer. We know the Trump administration reinstituted the National Space Council. That's good news. So leading voices could advocate for importance of space to America. But that's just a bureaucratic thing. That's not actually doing something. That's not doing anything at all. All right, the last thing we're going to talk about an endorsement, kind of a surprise endorsement for Kamala Harris. The publication called The Economist, which is notoriously Republican or conservative, announced Thursday that the outlet is backing Vice President Harris over former President Trump in the upcoming election, now less than a week away, which shouldn't be surprising given the economy is in such wonderful shape, in spite of what the Republicans will try to tell you. While some newspapers refused to back a presidential candidate this year, The Economist is endorsing Kamala Harris. Economist editors wrote in their endorsement, published early Thursday, tens of millions of Americans will vote for Mr. Trump next week. Some will be true believers, but many will take a calculated risk that in office, his worst instincts would be constrained. The writers added later that if Trump were to win the election, Americans would be gambling with the economy, the rule of law, and international peace. Any economist of any salt has spoken out about Donald Trump's claims of cutting taxes and employing tariffs. Everybody says that that would cause immense problems with the economy, including high inflation. Elon Musk, who Donald Trump says is going to be in charge of certain things, has said, listen, we're going to do this. It's going to be tough at first. You're going to go through some shit, but it'll be better in the long run. We've heard that before from Republicans with regards to the health care. But basically what Elon Musk is saying, we're going to burn everything down and try to bring it back in our own form, which for my money isn't a good idea. Why should we suffer? We've suffered for 9 years listening to the bullshit and the chaos. We have a thriving economy at this point. Why would you burn that down? Well, because you're enemies of this country and the people in it. That's why Elon Musk, Donald Trump. This is why the economists have supported Kamala Harris. As much as they don't like supporting a Democrat, they can see what's going to happen, and they don't want it to happen. Donald Trump, Elon Musk, they want to see this country fucking burn. But at least the economist is stepping up and saying, yeah, now we're not going to fucking do that. Anyway, we're going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I told you I could do it. Talking an hour straight ain't no big thing to me. I'm getting excited now. We've got the election on November 5th. On November 7th, I'm going to Washington, D.C. to talk to a group of court reporters, and we're going to talk about politics. Don't know what I'm going to say yet. I don't even know if I'll know what I'm going to say when I get there. I like having the interaction with people, and hopefully people in the crowd will be asking questions, making comments and such. But more importantly, I want to see the results of this election before I decide what I'm going to say. I'm a firm believer that Kamala's going to win and win in a big way. And if that happens, I know what I'm going to say. Or if she wins in a tight race, I don't really care as long as she wins. I think a big win would be more comforting and healing to the country. I think that's important. But I don't really care at this point as long as Kamala is president and Donald Trump is out on his ass, which is what's going to happen. All right. We're going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.